Welcome to Lawn Hero. We help homeowners turn simple yard data into practical, year-round lawn care guidance. In the next few minutes, we'll introduce our team and tech stack, then demo the end-to-end flow with each teammate showcasing their part. We'll wrap with key lessons learned and how you can contribute to the project.
Hello, I'm Carlos Sandoval. I'm a 10-year Air Force veteran, and I focus primarily on backend and AI implementation.
Hello, I'm Alexander Walker. I am a 4-year Army veteran, and I focus mainly on personnel management and the testing suite.
Hello, I'm Jay. I'm an Army veteran, 6 years active and reserves. I worked on the front end.
Hello, I'm Dominick Marshall. I'm a 10-year Air Force veteran. I worked on the back end and our custom yard mapping.
I'm Nick O'Brien, a 7-year Army vet, and I focused on the front end and third-party API integration for Lawn Hero. First, I'll briefly touch on our straightforward tech stack. We use Django and Django REST framework on the back end with a custom user model and secure cookie-based authentication. Our database is Postgres, and the front end was built using React and Material UI for a responsive user interface. We wrote tests with PyTest and Cypress and automated everything with GitHub Actions, which runs migrations and tests on each pull request. Together, this stack powers our core feature, Super Tips, which are OpenAI-powered yard and user preference-specific pieces of guidance. This is made possible with the Zippopotamus API for location data and React Leaflet and Esri for yard dimension mapping.
We are using a token-based authentication. Here I will be logging in into an existing account. Later on I will be registering for new accounts, so you guys know what that route looks like. Here with my current account. Here you can see I already have my current yard and yard preferences set up, which is quite nice. This is getting fetched. If we were to go to settings, you are able to see my email and my account type. I am an admin, and if needed, I am able to reset or change my password. So let's go with something simple. Update password. And if we were to log out back in with our old credentials, we are unable to. With our current creds, we can. So, as far as registering for new accounts, let's say if we are to use our instructor name and email, 08. For this new account, as you can see, we have nothing set up in regards to our yard and yard preferences. He is just a simple user and his current email.
Now I will demonstrate front-end app functionality starting at the dashboard. From this page, users can make and customize a new yard. First, you must put in a name. A valid zip code must be entered. If you enter an invalid zip code, thanks to our Zippopotamus API, it will let you know and will not let you proceed until you have a valid zip code put in. With a valid zip code put in, you hit the Map My Yard button. This will center the map on your zip code. From here, you can go ahead and map your yard to get square footage. Once you're done mapping the yard, you hit the Finish button and it automatically brings in your yard square footage based on the polygon you just drew into yard size. Soil type can be put in, grass type can be put in. See, there's no yard groups here. If you want to add this yard to a yard group, you can put that here. Check this box, the save becomes a next and allows you to edit preferences. So these are preferences based on the yard that you're creating. Let's say I want to water instead of every 2 days by default, every 3 days. I hit Save Preferences. What this then does is starts generating a list of tasks for your yard to do based on these preferences, as well as generating your super tips. So while that's running, let's head over to the to-do page, and you can now see there is a yard called Front that we just created. It has the tasks organized in chronological order. Today here, everything in the past below it, everything in the future above it. You can load more tasks all the way out into the end of the season. You can mark tasks as complete. You can edit tasks. You can uncomplete tasks. You can delete tasks. Tasks in the past are shown as red for being overdue. If you were to check a task in the past, it will deprioritize it in this mapping so that the overdue tasks are always pushed to the top regardless of the scheduled date. Now, onto the super tips. So on the super tips page, the first super tip is primarily a tutorial on what you should do, create a yard, and why you need to provide this information, what it allows us to do. Then the yards will be mapped here, and you can see them. They're super tips. So super tip number 2 is called watering. This first paragraph here is generic hard-coded text that we put in regarding watering. This second paragraph here is AI generated. The yard, its preferences, and its details were passed to OpenAI, and OpenAI provided feedback on how to effectively water your yard. Same for tools, AI generated. We can go down to fertilizing, AI generated fertilizing guidance based on your yard specifics. Now if you come back to dashboard, If you were to delete this yard group, it will move all the yard groups into an unassigned yard group, so the yard is not actually gone, just the yard group. If you go to the front yard, you can edit it. You can edit all the yard details. You can edit all the yard preferences if you want, and this will regenerate your tasks based on preferences and regenerate tips based on your preferences. We didn't change anything, so nothing will happen here. You can delete your yard, and back to the beginning.
On the back end, both yards and yard groups are tied directly to a user. Our API endpoints enforce that ownership, which means each user can only access their own yards and their own groups. The relationship between yards and groups is flexible. The user can create yards without assigning them to a group, and they can also create groups that don't yet have any yards in them. This gives people the freedom to organize their data in whatever way makes sense for them. Here's how that looks in practice. When we call get yards, the response returns all the yards for a logged in user. And if we call get yards by ID, we get the full details for a single yard. Inside the response, you'll notice fields like latitude and longitude, which store in the database whenever a yard is created or updated. When a backend doesn't handle mapping directly, these fields are what allow the front end to place a yard on a map with accuracy. We also return the yard group field, which links a yard to a group if one exists. The field is optional, so a yard can stand alone, or it can be grouped depending on how the user chooses to organize their data. When we call get yard groups, it returns all the yard groups the user owns and the yards inside those groups.
I'll show how we generate and persist super tips from yard data and preferences. First, I'll log in since super tip generation validates ownership of the yard. Only the yard ID is required to generate super tips. Behind the scenes, the backend builds a minimal payload from the yard preferences. Then we assemble the user prompt using the build user prompt, paired with a strict system prompt that requires exactly 7 sections. Back in Postman, we can run our super tips generation, and we'll get a successful response. And then we can fetch our super tips, and we can see that we have all 7 categories that we are looking for. We then persist exactly 1 tip set per yard using an update, or create on the super tips for that yard. So regenerating cleanly overrides the previous tips. This design keeps the contract stable for the front end, even if the model varies the wording. The parser enforces structure.
Now I will demonstrate how we keep Lawn Hero stable through testing. First, here's our Cypress mapping test. It walks through grouping a yard and confirms the map reflects the change. So we first start off with making sure that the viewport is that of a mobile device. And then we move through the menuing system, we input a valid zip code, and we mock the responses for all of the API calls in the background. And then we find the Make Polygon button. We click in 4 places, and once again to confirm it, and then we finish, save, match all the API calls, and then make sure that the information is reflected in the resulting summary. For our backend, we used PyTest to cover the models and views that we made in order to ensure that the JSON responses are coming back as expected by the front end. We have our GitHub set up so that these tests automatically run whenever a pull request is made. We use all of these to make sure our UI, API, and database stay in sync and providing the information that we requested. Originally, our team had some difficulty in communicating the requirements of the front end to the back end team, as well as how to call specific functions in the back end from the front end. To remedy this, we made an API.js file which held all of these helper functions, which allowed for easier use of the back end from the front end and easier communication of what the front end needs to the back end.
Looking forward, we have identified several features we want to add across the project. We'll introduce the caching and rate limits to improve performance. We also plan to turn lawn care guidance into scheduled reminders, so instead of just receiving tips, users will get actionable tasks at the right time. Another major enhancement is weather and seasonal integration. This will allow Lawn Hero to adjust recommendations based on local conditions, making it much more dynamic and useful. Finally, we'll continue tuning our AI prompting. The goal is to generate smarter, more relevant recommendations while reducing unnecessary auto-generated tasks by introducing batch endpoints. All of these features are designed to keep Lawn Hero practical and valuable, while making the experience even more personalized for our users.
Hello again, I'm Carlos. Here's how to contribute to Lawn Hero. You'll see the link at the bottom of the screen. Please clone and branch using git checkout, and then your feature. Whatever you do push to our repo, it is required to be reviewed and approved by at least 1 other member, and it must pass all auto tests. Whenever you're ready to push and open a pull request, our CI runs backend tests, builds the front end, and end-to-end.